The headlines. Pounded for weeks, Kharkiv has been decimated by Russian shelling, but Ukrainian fighters are resisting. We have a special report from the front line.
They tried to punch through here again and again and again, and they failed. The Ukrainian armed forces are keeping them at bay.
Meanwhile, in the south, rescuers search for survivors after a theatre is bombed with hundreds sheltering in the basement. Do they leave or stay behind? The agonizing decisions being made in the crucial port city of Odessa, including in the main orphanage, where some are too sick to travel.
They need oxygen. How can I move them? Am I supposed to take the healthiest to safety and abandon the rest?
And are we closer to a peace deal? Russia's president has put forward his proposals to Turkey.
All right, let's take a run through the morning's front pages now. We'll start with The Guardian, which says that Russia is now being accused by several countries, including Britain, of committing war crimes after its bombing of a school and theatre where people were sheltering. This in the past few days. And a picture there of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe and her family on the front page too. Now, The Eye reports that Vladimir Putin may have to abandon his planned tank assault on Kiev because of the strong resistance that his forces are meeting, but may increase the use of rocket and artillery bombardment instead. The Times reports on that Ukrainian resistance, the headline, Ukraine takes fight to Putin. The Mirror focuses in on mothers in Ukraine who braved Russian shelling to rescue hundreds of children from the capital, Kiev. Well, the Telegraph says that the Home Secretary and the Defence Secretary, Priti Patel and Ben Wallace, were targeted by Russian imposters posing as Ukrainian politicians by video call.
Our headlines today. In the last hour, explosions have been heard in the western city of Lviv. Smoke can be seen in the direction of the airport, 6 kilometres from the city centre.
On the front line in Kharkiv, where Ukrainian troops have held back Russian advances for 3 weeks, despite heavy daily bombardment.
And around this time, we try and put together everything that's happened overnight. There has been quite a lot happening, and Howell is our guide this morning. So take us through what we know so far.
Hi, Charlie. Hi, Naga. Yeah, well, so in Lviv, the largest city in western Ukraine this morning, we've seen large plumes of smoke coming from the direction of the airport. That's about 6 kilometres from the centre. Now, this video was sent in by one of our reporters there. Lviv's mayor says the airport was not hit, but a building next to it was. No casualties that have been reported there so far. Over then to Kyiv. Now, these aerial shots earlier show buildings being hit by shelling this morning in a northern suburb of the capital. An explosion there was heard, according to an eyewitness. Again, no official information about the attack yet, but no news of any casualties so far. The latest assessment by the MOD here in the UK says that Russia has made minimal progress over the last week, stalling outside cities like Kyiv, failing to supply their forward lines. But cities like Kharkiv and Mariupol are still encircled and are being shelled heavily. Now, in total, the UN says 3.2 million people have now left Ukraine. So how will all this end? Well, President Putin has laid out his demands to end this war in a phone conversation with Turkey. We're acting as a kind of a go-between between Russia and Ukraine. So the Russian demands fall into 2 categories. Firstly, he wants Ukraine to promise not to join NATO, something that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has already conceded. Ukraine would have to reduce its stash of arms, protect the Russian language in the country, and there's something called denazification, which could involve the government promising to clamp down on neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. Now, the second category is where the difficulty will be. And in his phone conversation, Mr. Putin said it would probably need face-to-face negotiations between him and President Zelensky before agreement could be reached on these points. Now, Mr. Zelensky has said he's prepared to negotiate with him one-to-one. Less detail, though, on what he would concede. The assumption is that Russia will demand control over parts of eastern Ukraine and for Crimea, which it illegally annexed in 2014, to be formally recognised as part of its territory. That would be a bitter pill for Ukraine to swallow. No word yet from the Ukrainian president on how he might respond to those demands, but in his latest video address overnight, he said this.
It is not the time to reveal our tactics of negotiations as well. Negotiations for peace, sovereignty, territorial integrity of our state, our freedom. Working more in silence than on television, radio or Facebook. I think this is right.
So the situation on the ground seems to be locked into a very slow war of attrition, which will bring more shocking images like this. We know that President Biden will today urge China not to provide Russia with military equipment when he speaks to President Xi today. It shows you that the whole world is watching and has a stake in what's still unfolding in Ukraine.
Indeed. Hal, thanks for taking us through all that.